Hello, this is Photography Gamer. Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I'll be breaking down the photo mode in Dying Light 2 Stay Human on the Xbox Series S. I'll go through each setting one by one and I'll explain what each one does and how you can use them to your advantage. Okay, let's have a look at the photo mode. Right, first we're going to go through some basic settings. So to enter the photo mode, you need to pause the game and then scroll down to enter photo mode. Once you are in the mode, the L and R analog sticks move the camera around, so that's good for composing your shot. The left trigger and right trigger are for craning. Craning basically raises the camera up or lowers the camera. If you have the camera very low, like on street level, that is good for creating a sense of scale. If you have the camera high up, that's good for panoramic shots or kind of wide landscapes. If you left click the analog stick, you get a grid of thirds. Why do you need a grid? Well, it's good for measuring. Now, if you've got multiple subjects or multiple key points of interest in your image, the grid of thirds allows you to measure them so they can be kind of equidistant from each other, basically to create some kind of image that has a nice fluidity in terms of spacing. If you right click the analog stick, you can hide the user interface. This is for when you want to take a photo. And to take a photo, i.e. a screenshot, you need to press the screenshot button on your Xbox. The left bumper and the right bumper, they switch tabs of the menus we're going to go through in a moment. If you use the left analog stick, that will move a circular item on the screen. Now this item is used to change all of the settings, so the circle has to be over the menu element that you want to change or the arrow that you want to change in terms of the value. A little bit annoying, you can't use the D-pad. Why they haven't featured that, I don't know, because I think every photo mode I've ever used on the console has had D-pad use, this one does not. If you press the Y button, that is free camera. So you start out in first person mode, as in the image that you've seen when you've paused the game. If you press Y, you can move to free camera and then use the sticks, as I said earlier, to move the camera around. The X button resets the image. And then finally, the B button closes the photo mode. Right, so those are the basic settings. Now let's look at those tabs that I mentioned earlier. So first tab is camera. What have we got there? Right, the first two, they are interlinked. So we've got aperture and focus distance. Aperture essentially is how much of the image is going to be in focus. This is measured in f-stops. That's a photography term, so don't worry. What's an f-stop? Who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. The higher the f-stop number, the more things in the image that will be in focus. The lower the f-stop number, the less that will be in focus. This can then be determined by the focus distance setting. So you choose where the focus distance begins, and then by changing the aperture, that will dictate how much beyond that point will be in focus forward and back. So you can play around, find your balance. Then we have zoom. Zoom is something that I would use if I just want to get closer to a subject if I can't normally, or if I want to make an adjustment to my framing, or just zoom out, zoom in. You know, it's good for just making small alterations. Then we have roll. Roll basically tilts the camera left or right. You can use this if you want to do sort of sideways portrait photography. You can't like rotate the frame on your TV, so you could do it sideways, but you'll get a crook in your neck. Or you can use roll to create dynamic movement or surrealism. Right, the next tab is color. Firstly, like I said, you've got to use the left analog stick to hover over the menus in the item, but here we have to have that over the menu and then use the right stick up and down to scroll through, because there's additional settings here than you can see in the first instance. Firstly, we've got filter and filter intensity. So the filters, they're very much like anything you'd have on Instagram or any other photo app. They give you some sort of color scheme like black and white or warm or etc, etc. They're all quite severe, so you might not want to have them 100%. That's where filter intensity comes in. You can use that, and that alters how much of the filter is actually present. Then we have temperature. Temperature is a slider. At one end, it goes sort of a warm orangey yellow. At the other end, it goes like blue. So it depends. Do you want a warm tint to your image? Do you want a cold tint to your image? It's completely up to you. I use warm in the daytime. I use the blue at night. Next we have exposure. So exposure lightens the image, but it doesn't lighten shadows necessarily. It really just lightens the light. So, if it's a sunny day and you use exposure up, it will become a bit blown out. It's also good if you want to create a fake nighttime shot. Then we have saturation. Saturation deals with color. If you take the saturation out, it will be black and white. If you add it to 100%, it will look ridiculous and really over the top colorful like pop art. Then we have contrast. Contrast is good for definition between light and dark. So if you've got an image where there's lots of brightness and lots of shadows, but you want to add a little bit more contrast to that, use the contrast slider. I use it a lot. Use it with exposure together, you can create some nice images. And finally, we've got vignette. Vignettes are a border around the image. The border is like a dark shadow. It's not kind of full black. It's a sort of graduated black filter. The idea is if you blacken the border of an image, where's your eye going? It's not going there, is it? No, it's going into the center. So a vignette is good if you've got some centrally focused element that you want to accentuate, so you will use the vignette to black the border out, thus leading the viewer's eye into the middle. Next tab is called player, and we have visibility. So you can do on or off. What does that mean? You can do the visibility of your character on or off. Who knew? So there you go, on or off. And the last tab is additional FX. So we've got letterboxing. This is like black bars at the top and bottom of the screen, but you've only got one option. And then there's border. So this is like basic frames. You've got about 4 or 5. I can't say any of them are particularly relevant or good. So, the additional effects element in this, not so great. Okay, that is the photo mode. So what's the verdict? Well, the good points are that the focus settings are clean. The exposure, contrast and vignettes are a nice addition, but in the main, it's the game world that makes the photo mode worthwhile. It's an epic world with really diverse architecture and features, as well as lots of zombies, enemies and verticality. The bad points, not being able to use the D-pad to change the settings. Why? It just adds more time to your play, and it's really not fit for a controller. Let's be completely honest about it. Also, you can't change your character's stance or facial expression, or the time of day even. That'd be a nice feature just for a bit of fun. Also, more overlays, some stickers, some logos, and just fun things. Like I said, photo modes should be fun first and foremost. Here, it's a little bit dry. So in summary, it feels like what it is, a basic photo mode that they've sort of chucked in there as a placeholder that they intend to update at a later time. Personally, with photo modes, I'd rather that someone does it properly or they just don't do it at all. As these kind of half-baked modes, they just leave me feeling like they weren't really bothered in the first place. So scoring, that will be reflected. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. It's fine, it's okay, you can take shots, but it's very limited. Okay, so lastly, we're going to have a look at 3 photos that I've taken, and I'll just talk you through what I did to create them. Okay, the first photo, a very nice orangey warm sunset. So how did I do this? Well, first and foremost, I looked for a place where I could place my character on clean sky with things in the distance, i.e. buildings. I did it in a moment where the sun was either going up or down in the distance. So I think clearly you can see I've added some warmth to the image. I've definitely bumped up contrast, probably to maximum. I've probably lowered the exposure slightly. There may be a very faint vignette on there. And the other key element is the focus. I've focused on the subject and I've really blurred out everything else. You can still see that there are buildings and stuff, but it gives it a dreamy quality that suits a kind of a sunset, very warm, interesting silhouetted lead character. So it's kind of a nice, interesting shot. Second one, this is black and white. So here we have Lawan and the lead character behind with a very menacing axe lurking there. So for me, a lot of photography is about storytelling. So here, this is an image that really does tell a story. So you have this sort of pensive look on Lawan's face. She's sort of looking over her shoulder like she's anticipating something. And then you have this blurry figure with a dirty grey axe. Like, what's going to happen next? Doesn't look good, does it? The black and white, the blurring, the contrast. It's got a lot of thick atmosphere. So I definitely put the black and white filter on. I raised contrast and exposure enough just sort of to give it a balance. And then the focus, I could have blurred everything in the background out, but I wanted to just emphasize the axe. I think Lawan's got a nice expression. It's a nicely kind of, again, grid of thirds like we talked about earlier, balancing. I like to put my subjects on one of the third lines just so that they feel like there's space for something else. So yeah, interesting one there. And lastly, we have a nice gruesome action shot. So this was a much wider shot. So here is the original. So you can see a lot more in the image, but I felt, maybe I can cut it down, make it more punchy just with one character and one zombie. So there it is. So what did I do? Well, obviously there's a bit of warmth. I think there might be the Haran filter on there. I don't think vignetting is on there because the subject's not central. I think colour a little bit more to bring that red out, but I think what the key element here is focus. You know, the tendency with a lot of people with photo modes is to have everything in focus, but focus is a very powerful tool that can do a lot for you. Here, the main character's focused, and then you have this zombie who looks like he's kind of doing some kind of dance. Obviously, I've just nailed it with that dirty great cleaver. And then just to blur the zombie out, it just has this really strange like image because of the blurring, and it just, you know, it creates a sense of surrealism. Also, you look at the camera, that's not straight, is it? That's got a roll on it, like we said, tilting. Again, that can emphasize the sense of movement, combat, etc. Okay, there you go. That is the photo mode in Dying Light 2. I hope the guide has been useful. I hope you found the information helpful and it will make you enjoy the mode more. It's not a great mode, but you know, let's hope Techland follow up on their promise to update it. I'm sure they will, because they did a lot with Dying Light 1, so I don't doubt that they will make it better, but for now, yeah, it's okay. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, Patreon, whatever takes your fancy. This is Photography Gamer signing off. Thank you.